combination of science and patriotism and the ideal of making a contribution to society and to humanity, those things have all been interwoven in my history from the very beginning.
Our next explorer faced the challenge of melding his love of interstellar mysteries with his goal of helping others achieve the American dream. With a first name meaning Saturn, Keivan Stassun found his path to the stars in the hostile Arizona desert.
My mother was and is a very demanding woman. She persevered through some very difficult challenges in her life. She was born in southern Mexico, and as a young girl dreamed of someday coming to America, of partaking in the American dream. And so as a young woman, pregnant with me, she made the very daring move to enter the United States, motivated by the idea that her child would be a US citizen, be able to lead the charge in pursuit of the American dream. And what she expected from me was greatness, or maybe more importantly, the aspiration toward greatness. Whatever that might be, that I identify my gifts and then pursue them toward the higher goal of service to society and mankind. I learned to fake it when it came to sports, but faking it didn't get me very far for very long. That's not where my God-given gifts were to be. I liked computers. Part of that was that I liked playing video games. But just as much as I liked playing the video games, I also liked tinkering on the computer at a more technical level. Taking the computer apart, figuring out how it worked, writing computer programs to do little things. That was the kind of thing that to me was fun. I consider myself, looking back now, very fortunate. At a very young age, I was identified by the public elementary school that I was going to as an academically gifted child. And so I was tracked into the science and math magnet school.
Keivan thrived in the new environment and continued to excel through high school. His hard work paid off with a full scholarship to the University of California at Berkeley. But Keivan was struggling to reconcile his mother's goals for him with his desire to be a scientist. Gabor Basri, Keivan's astronomy professor and mentor, inadvertently showed the young man his future by allowing him to experience his past.
The professor that I was working with at Berkeley took me to the Kitt Peak National Observatory in southern Arizona, and looking out toward the south from that mountain ridge next to the observatory, I found myself for the first time face to face with the very same expanse of desert that my mother had walked across and that had brought me to that point. It really took hold for me in that instant in a very powerful way. I can pursue my passion to study the stars and use that as a vehicle to enable others coming behind me to pursue their passion. I realized this is my calling. And that call has been there since I was a child, and I've been hearing it in the stories of my mother from the very beginning.
With a new sense of purpose, Keivan graduated from Berkeley in 1994 and began working on his doctorate at the University of Wisconsin. While there, Keivan, true to his mother's teaching, began the first of several outreach programs for minority children. In 2003, he accepted a position at Vanderbilt University. His continued dedication to sharing the American dream led to the creation of a new bridge program between Vanderbilt and Fisk universities. The program guides minority students through undergraduate studies to PhDs in science and engineering.
My own research centers around the question of how do stars like our sun and solar systems come to be? Several years ago, my research team and I were scouring through a large pile of data, and we were looking for the possibility of finding a stillborn star. In other words, a star that was in the process of being born, but didn't quite make it. It didn't have enough material in order to eventually light up as a full-fledged star. This is what we call a brown dwarf. And we had this signal in our data, but it was very peculiar. The nature of the data that we had made it pretty clear that the objects that were orbiting and periodically blocking one another were not stars.
While working at Kitt Peak National Observatory, Keivan took measurements of the amount of light coming from an object that he suspected to be a newborn star. The amount of light changed in a repeating way, indicating that there were actually two stars orbiting around one another that occasionally blocked each other's light. But to make the brightness measurements from his different observations match up, Keivan needed to figure out just how often the stars orbited one another. He calculated their orbits, assuming that they weighed what ordinary stars weigh, but the data from the different observations just wouldn't match up.
I was able to finally get the data to match together in just the right way so that I could finally see, here's what's happening. The reason the system looks so strange is because these are not two stars at all. They are both brown dwarfs. We had two stillborn stars orbiting one another, and nobody had ever seen anything like this. We were seeing something for the very first time. And it was a discovery that had come together through years of teamwork from my entire research team working together. But I also got to experience just that thrill of discovery, that aha moment.
The aha moments are exciting, but as Keivan can tell you, they're also rare.
You have to be the kind of person who can say, I'm probably not going to make a great discovery this day, but that's okay. And to be able to do that day after day after day, and sometimes, frankly, it's discouraging. And to be able to then step back and say, I got to keep at this, and we're going to make some headway eventually. And eventually you do, and that's really rewarding. But you've got to be able to stick to it.
Keivan can trace his determination and never-say-die attitude to that heroic journey through the Altar Valley many years ago.
Too often we cheapen what heroism means because we equate it with fame and glory. The people you admire are those who did things that were hard because they were important. And so for me, my heroes are those people in my life who did the hard but necessary things because they were important. And that's what I try to stay true to. With my boys, I feel particularly compelled for them to know the stories that I know that have been so important in my life. And they will learn what it means to be an American and what an exceptional and special thing that is, and what kind of responsibility comes with that privilege.
Tennessee Explorers was made possible in part by a grant from the National Science Foundation.